Welcome to this very special edition of The Tea. I am honored and pleased to bring this to you. This, for me, is important. It's an important conversation. It's the First Amendment, freedom of the press. And with me in this moment is none other than independent journalist from Minnesota, Georgia Fort, Emmy Award, three-time Emmy Award-winning Georgia Fort, who, if I'm correct, was the only journalist in the court during the Derek Chauvin trial. And now Georgia Fort is in the news because she covered an action from an activist group going into a church looking for what the activist group believed was a pastor who was involved in some kind of way with ICE. But she was chronicling this event from what we have from the reports. But I want to get all of this from Georgia herself. Georgia, welcome.
Thank you so much, April, for having me.
Um, Thank you for joining us today for the tea. What happened? What can you tell us from that Sunday and then leading up to today, what you're dealing with today?
Well, I think the backstory a lot of people have not heard about me as an independent journalist who's from Minnesota and who's based here. I had been running nonstop since the fatal shooting of Renée Good. So I think
Mm,
that had been 11 days, right? The day that the church protest happened was day 11 of me and my itty bitty small team working 12 to 16-hour days with no days
mhm.
off. And so I was actually extremely exhausted
Yeah.
that morning, kind of debated on whether to go out or not. But the reason why I continued to show up and showed up that day specifically, we talk about this a lot in journalism, right? Like the credibility of your sources.
Yes.
And so the person who was leading this action, she is a civil rights attorney.
Hmm.
She is a doctor. She is a reverend. She has done so many things here in our community, and she is the definition of a credible and trustworthy source. And so I felt like it was important to, from a local perspective, show the world outside of the protests that were happening at the Federal Whipple building, outside of the protests that were happening at the hotels where ICE people were staying and at the memorials, that there were these other actions that were happening. I showed up solely in my capacity to document as a journalist, and all of everything that I captured that day is published.
And what was the name of the activist that was arrested? Because who was your source? Because she was the first round of arrests in this.
That's right. Yep. She's civil rights attorney, Dr. Nekima Levy Armstrong.
Yes. And she was one of two that were arrested. She was the first round. And then we heard that the judge refused to charge you and Don twice. Two judges refused, well, two court proceedings where they refused to charge you. And then the federal charges came through a grand jury, a sealed grand jury document. And then what happened Friday shocked the world. Your video, you were so spot on by videotaping. I think right now in this moment, video is so important because the narrative that others, particularly from this White House, that comes to us is something totally different than what we see. We saw from your video, your ring camera, and also through your house, people dressed in, and thank you for sipping the tea, people dressed in DEA flak jackets, Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA,
Humiliating.
came to your
Humiliating.
house in your
Yeah.
cul-de-sac
Yep.
to arrest you, and you had the video. Tell me why you felt it was important to document because we're glad that you did, but tell me why it was important that you document this and why did you?
Well, I'm a storyteller. It's in my nature. But more importantly, I had spent the week prior to being arrested seeing Don Lemon be brutalized in the media, you know? I saw them attacking him, and I knew that I was also there that day, but people weren't attacking me because they don't know me. They you know, I just don't have the name recognition. I've never worked at
Well, you do
CNN,
now. You
you
do
know.
now.
And so for me, it was just important that I be able to tell my own story, that people know that I too am a journalist, that I've been doing this for more than 17 years. I have worked really hard to produce my own independent news program for television. It was nominated for 12 regional Emmys and we won three. You know, that I've been doing this work for a long time, that this isn't something that I just woke up and started doing, that I've been serving my community. People forget journalism is a public service. And
Yes.
I'm proud to be a public servant, right? And so I just wanted people to know that. And I think the best way to tell stories is with the photos and the videos of what actually happened. And so, as my mom was demanding to see the warrant and checking with the attorney to make sure it was legitimate, I did a quick live. I updated the public what was going on. And I sent the videos to as many people as I could quickly to let people know this is happening, this is real, and it's an attack on our First Amendment.
And just so everyone is clear, you had never worked with Don Lemon before. You don't even know Don Lemon, and you
No,
haven't talked.
I was on his show one time shortly before.
Okay.
And then, you know, he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come to Minnesota." Had no idea, you know, how long he was gonna be here or anything. And I was looking forward to meeting him. I think independent journalism looks great on him. I've, you know, been following his independent coverage and was really excited for the opportunity to be able to connect. And then all this happened. So definitely not how I had imagined getting acquainted, but
Yeah.
here we are.
So, Georgia, I'm going to be real honest with you. And I'm an independent journalist now too. I questioned myself. I said, would I have gone into that church with the activists to chronicle? Some parts of me said I would, and then other parts of me said, I don't know. Do you feel like that was the best thing to do to chronicle still in the midst of all of this?
Well, the thing I think people have been tearing Don Lemon apart about, that he was 100% being honest about, is like, we didn't know. And I think this is why it's so significant that I am local and that I'm from this community. This wasn't
And
the
trusting
first.
and relying on your source.
Right. And so you if you go back, so and maybe people have heard this term, that this specific action was called Operation Pull Up.
Yes.
Operation Pull Up ain't new. They was pulling up in George Floyd. They was pulling up after Daunte Wright. And so to actually understand what this action was, you needed to be here as this movement in Minnesota has progressed. Minnesota is ground zero, right? How did the officers for George Floyd get charged? If you remember, it wasn't because the county attorney woke up and said that he wanted to charge them. It wasn't because the governor said he wanted. There was public pressure. And it's not because the third precinct was set on fire either. It's because you had grassroots organizers who were showing up, pulling up at the doorstep of the people who are in power. And so, if you look back, I remember one of the first Operation Pull Ups I heard of was at the home of the president of the police union. There was
Mhm.
another Operation Pull Up that happened after Daunte Wright that was at the home of the current then county attorney who was overseeing the case against Kimberly Potter, and he refused to bring forth charges. So they pulled up to his house and they protested, and they did that for several weeks. And in fact, there was times he actually came out and he talked to the organizers and talked to the protesters. I was one of the only journalists who was there documenting this. And so, to be honest with you, April, I had paced back and forth all morning for this Operation Pull Up because it was below zero. And I'm like, we're going to be out in front of somebody's house. Let me get 5 layers of clothes on. It's going to be cold. You know, I'm borrowing people's coats and sweaters because I'm
Oh my
thinking
God.
I'm thinking Operation Pull Up is going to be outside protesting at someone's house. And
Hmm.
so Don Lemon has said this everywhere that we did not know. You can go and you can look at the flyer of
Hmm.
the protest that day. It said meet at Cub Foods, right? And so you
Mm.
meet at one location. And the reason why they do this is because they don't want to publicize, and historically it's been at people's houses, right? So they don't want to put someone's home address on the internet. They don't want people that are
Right.
not, there to protest peacefully to show up and start, inciting things or doing property damage. Every time I've gone out and cover actions by this organizer, it's always been peaceful. It's always been very like strategic at the doorstep of a decision maker, and so that's what I was expecting going into this. And so they had a different action plan. They're organizers, but we didn't know. We're not a part of the planning of these things. We showed up at Cub Foods and followed the caravan to their location.
The
And
location, City's Church in St. Paul.
yeah, yeah. And so at that point, you do have to make a decision. I was there in my capacity as a journalist. I documented as a journalist, and the footage is published. It speaks for itself. And so I think, we're at a time where we have to really start to ask ourselves, right? If you have members of the community, civil rights attorney, a school board member, a candidate for Senate, a former candidate of the Green Party, leaders in our community who are saying, we are observing the ACLU just filed a class action lawsuit because there's been so many US citizens unlawfully and unconstitutionally arrested by ICE. We're seeing the due process violated. So many immigration attorneys are coming forward and saying, my clients aren't getting due process. We just saw a judge issue a letter that cited more than 100 cases where due process has been violated. And then in Minnesota, 3 shootings in less than 3 weeks and two of them fatal. I do feel as a journalist, it should be documented. And we're facing federal charges now simply just for documenting what has happened in this community. And to me, I believe journalism is not a crime. I don't think that
It's
we,
not a crime.
yeah,
Our founding fathers, our founding fathers, before the internet, before independent journalism, before there was media, when there were town criers and some newspapers, they put in place something called the First Amendment, freedom of the press. It is that extra layer when the checks and balances don't balance out between the three branches of government. And that's where we are right now. There's that fourth layer, the fourth estate, that adds as an accountability piece. And that's, as a journalist, I'm sorry, I stand with you in the First Amendment. As a journalist, I mean, I've been targeted, but this is not just a target for journalism. This is something to set a precedent. And also, you are caught in the dislike of Don Lemon with the president of the United States. There's a rift that the president has with Don Lemon. You are caught in that. But what you said is that Operation Pull Up has done this before, and it's not been like this. So this was an elevated action from listening to what you said by Operation Pull Up that you've covered, correct?
yeah, it definitely was different. It was different than previous actions.
Mm. So you and Don were two of a number of people who were arrested and been charged federally. Others were activists and lawmakers.
There's a candidate for Senate. There is a former Green Party candidate, a school board member, a civil rights attorney, and then there were several other people who were there that were not charged. And most of those people were elderly white folk.
The way I understand it, City's Church is a very it's a religious group, but they're very extreme in their beliefs, extreme right in their beliefs, if I'm correct. Am I correct with that?
I'm not familiar with the church. This is the first time I ever heard of the church.
Okay.
You know, um,
What do you want people to know as we start wrapping up this interview that I'm very thankful for? What do you want people to know about you and this situation?
I'm a journalist.
Mm,
And I think that an attack on journalism is an attack on truth itself. People in our field oftentimes personally may not agree with what they're doing. They may agree, they may not agree. Like I've
right.
had to give people the example through this. I'm like, you do know that there are war photographers and
Mhm.
journalists who have to go cover war. And so you think that they agree with what they're covering, because I think there has been this erosion of the understanding of what journalism is, and
Mhm.
that if you're documenting, you're participating, or if you're documenting, you're agreeing. And I'm not saying that to say I agree or disagree. I'm offering it because I think that we have to understand the nuance and the
Yeah.
complexity of our profession. And if we just say that, documenting is participating, um, it removes the protection that we have
Yeah.
to find the truth. It's dangerous when
Yes.
you're investigating and you're trying
Yes.
to uncover the truth, and I think that was one of the questions that I had is like, why are people so mad about this? And some of it I feel like is the unmasking of an agent. This demonstration unmasked the head agent here in Minnesota who holds a lot of power. And so I want people to know that I'm a journalist, that I have fearlessly through my whole career pursued the truth. The
Yes.
name of my show was Here's the Truth when we were doing our TV show.
Mhm.
And that we are currently in an information war. And
Yes.
so, April, even in my pursuit of the truth, to show people what's truly happening here in Minnesota, right? That I can be not just ridiculed and criticized and condemned publicly, but now they're trying to criminalize me. And so are we going to allow the attack on the truth, the attack on press to escalate this information war where we no longer have access to real facts, that real facts are now up for debate? When you think about the White House publishing an AI altered image of Nekima, darkening her skin, making it appear as though she's
Yes.
crying hysterically. And we're saying that that type of information sharing is acceptable, but going out in controversial moments where people are demanding justice, documenting the truth of what's happening, that is a criminal act. I think what we're approaching on some very dangerous times for whether or not our public has a desire to know what the facts are, or if they want to be disillusioned. Do you want misinformation? You prefer your information to be altered?
Mhm.
And if you don't, if you do believe in preserving facts, integrity, truth, justice, I think that Americans are going to have to stand up and defend the press. We are your
Yes.
last lifeline for the truth. And
That part.
so, it's not my place or my role to debate the details. It's not my place
Mhm.
or my role to agree or disagree, right? Those Nekima Levy Armstrong, Chantel Allen, the other people who have been charged, they can speak to the why. They can defend, the reason that they felt that this was necessary. That's not my job. My job was to document what happened. And we wouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation if it wasn't documented, right?
That's right.
We wouldn't be able to debate anything. And if you compare and contrast the mainstream narrative of the details of how this all went down, our documentation, it actually can dispute a lot of the claims that are being made. Like you go watch
Exactly.
the footage, a lot of the things that they're saying, you're not going to see in the footage. And so it
Exactly.
is important to have a document, just like with George Floyd. The first press release that came out about George Floyd said that he died of a medical complication. And that was written by the Minneapolis Police Department, a city funded agency, right? So, had it not been for the documentation of
Of
Darnella
somebody
Frazier,
on a phone,
do you
somebody
think
on a phone.
did she agree with what she was filming? Well, it wasn't her role to agree or disagree. It was to document, to have a
Right,
record of
right.
the facts of what
That's right.
happened. And she did. And it was shared to the world, and it held up in court. The same thing can be true with Renée Good and Alex Pretti. There were people there
Right.
who bravely, courageously picked up their phone and they filmed what happened. And now there is an account, there is a record. And so I think we get to a really dangerous time if we start to try and criminalize the
Exactly.
people who are documenting the facts so that there is a record of the truth of what is happening in our community.
Georgia, you're absolutely right. We're treading on some very fragile ground. And one thing you said with the White House and how they did an AI composite of Nekima, that was terrible. That was terrible. What you're supposed to get facts from the White House. The White House is supposed to be a place that is balanced and for everyone. It's clearly changed, okay?
It's supposed to be the most prestigious institution in our nation.
But not just prestigious. Anything that comes, the words, the actions out of the White House can change.
Integrity.
Yes, it can change
Yes.
everything. Perception. It can even change markets around the world. The stock market here. And we are now vilifying a black woman, changing her look because you want that to be. Not the fact that the law says it, but because you want it to be. Two, and I'm speaking from experience, being a black person, reporting while black. See, your problem, in my eyes, and understanding what this administration has done in the past, how dare you report on a situation that involves that the crux is about minorities, about migrants who may look like you or be closely in kinship with you. That's one, because they believe that you're already skewed. That's in their mind, that you cannot fairly report on a story in your community, which you did. So, hats off to you
Thank
for
you.
being an exceptional Emmy, three-time Emmy award-winning journalist who is out there doing her work. And as I wonder, and I've questioned myself, would I have gone into that church? I stand with you and Don and the First Amendment. Freedom of the press. Freedom of the press. This is an unprecedented moment in the nation's history. Yes, the press has been challenged by presidents before about leaks, etc. You know, the information that we get that's so sensitive. But this is a moment of covering something. They're trying to also layer these journalists with the terms activists, and that carries a whole nother level of prosecution. They went in there to chronicle. They did not bust in that church. So, Georgia, I just want to say to you, thank you for joining me. And this was an information session, but I had to publicly say to you that I stand with you. I stand
Thank
with
you.
you and Don. I know Don very well. And through this process, I've gotten to learn who you are and what you are. And I appreciate your commitment to journalism and still
Thank you.
fighting the fight. And I'm here anytime you need. And I'm sure many of the contrarians that watch will be there for you. How do we support you in this moment?
Thank you for asking. I've just been asking people to continue to support my journalism by going to
Mhm,
my website, georgiafort.com. There's
mhm,
a page there to support.
mhm.
It is important to me that this doesn't silence me,
Yeah.
that I am able to continue going out in the community and sharing what's happening. And so if people want to support that way, I want to continue doing the work. I'm from here. This is my community, and
Hmm.
we are still ground zero. There is still a huge push here in Minnesota for accountability, and I want to continue to document that journey from both the standpoint of community voices, but also our elected officials as well.
Paraphrasing Gil Scott Heron, they don't want the revolution to be televised, but it shall be televised. Georgia Fort, thank you so much. And thank you. You are today's shero, tomorrow's shero. You go
Thank
down
you.
in the history books, my sister. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for watching the tea.